thinking of doing this podcast for a very, very long time. And this idea came to us probably 2 years ago, but we've since then not acted on it until today. So, with me is Monish Javeri, and I am Amir Shah, and we are here to talk a little bit about a lot of the ideas we've had over the past 2 years and continue to have today. A lot of these ideas are quite abstract, so listeners should know, or must know rather, that taking notes might be useful. Anyway, so over the past couple of years we've talked about various things, but those things have
You
been...
want to get into the kind of things that we've been talking about?
Yeah, maybe. So just to give the listeners an idea.
Like a broad perspective or
Yeah.
varying themes that we have been talking about.
Most of these things have been related to design, politics, business,
finance, yes.
but we've never really had a structure to talk about those things. So it's very interesting to do it like this. It
And
feels
that's
a
where the
little
idea
weird.
of the podcast came
Feels a
in.
little strange to have a structure and record what we are saying. But I guess we can... One of the topics that we were just thinking about before we started was artificial intelligence. And we could talk about the benefits and some of the evident loopholes in the technology till kingdom come. But the question is, what do we really feel about it? What is our personal take on it?
Can I slightly remodify, tweak the question?
Okay.
Of course, that's part of the question where
We talk about our personal...
artificial intelligence and where it is going to take us, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever. But the second addition to that was the idea of spirituality. Now, both of them are very dense and very broad and long answers, right?
Both, yeah.
Both are concepts which are very concepts which are in the grey zone, concepts which have multiple answers to them, and
which cannot be explained in a few paragraphs.
In one podcast for sure, of course.
Or one book.
One book. But let's take a shot at it, Chal.
I think this is a good way of segueing into artificial intelligence, which is to say what happens. So there are so many different ways of looking at artificial intelligence and spirituality. One is, can spirituality be artificially inseminated into a machine? Can a machine contemplate its own existence? And would that experience for it be similar to our own? That's one thing. So that, I guess, one aspect is that, which is the interplay of spirituality and artificial intelligence. The second is what happens to our own spirituality when we know that there's something like artificial intelligence. And finally, the question I think that a lot of listeners would want to know is, what about all of the allied fields? Because spirituality does not come alone. There's always a method to become spiritual. There's yoga, there's meditation, there's reading, there's religion for some people. Spirituality is a very broad idea in and of itself.
Exactly.
So I guess the starting point ought to be what spirituality is for us.
And artificial intelligence. We can define both of them in just as starters to begin with, to define them so that there is no moving in and around or beating around the bush for that. So there are many ways to define spirituality, like you said, religion and this and that and meditation. But
no, I was just talking about the methods of becoming spiritual, so to speak. I don't know. I don't have the word for it, but to get that spiritual experience. And it is a journey. Spirituality is a discovery of the self and so many other things. So it requires methods and it requires these tools.
You've put it there's this one definition that I already can think of, which is discovering oneself. That's one. The other is being with one. Then the third is if you start getting a bit deeper and deeper, when we elaborate this concept of discovering oneself, it's also about understanding one's thought processes, understanding one's, to the deepest level of algorithms. And I'm intentionally introducing the word algorithm so that I can later on reconnect it to AI. But your thinking algorithms, your thinking modes, but then overlaid with your...
So just to be clear about this, when you talk about thinking algorithms, you're talking about mental models.
Right? Mental models, but of course not in a flowchart sense, but in a rather complex sense where there is an algorithm which is also affected by many of the other uncertain things which happen around that person, along with So
let's just
we don't think in isolation.
That's true.
There's always a thinking going on, which is kind of, let's say, in isolation, but it is affected by parallel thought processes. So if I'm thinking about, let's say, a chair, it is going to be affected about in one sense or the other. It's going to get affected about, let's say, how much money I make. There is going to be some correlation. Not always, sometimes.
Yeah.
Apart from that, it is also going to get affected by what my emotional processes are like. Yeah, so they will play some catalytic
role there.
So
algorithms are basically those things. The way that we process a thought.
Yes.
And get to some conclusion, which is what algorithms do, which is that they process information in a pattern. And
yes, completely.
Okay, cool. So maybe but I think for me the notion of spiritual, the concept of it revolves around the idea that we are blessed with consciousness, which is a very rare thing in the universe. As far as we know, there's no other life. There's a chance that there is life, but it's a very rare thing. And in this very rare instance of life, human beings have an added advantage of cognition and the ability to process complex information and contemplate our own existence. And within that, I think spirituality is the ability to reconnect with what made us, which is this sort of energy from the Big Bang and all of that, and still find, for the lack of a better word, divinity in the energy. For me, that is spirituality, and to sort of feed off from that energy and use it, channelize it, live through it. And I guess for me, then eventually spirituality becomes, in a more practical sense, living without fear or regret and contemplating my own existence in a world that is becoming increasingly complex and difficult and process oriented. So I guess for me that spirituality is a personal thing which requires channelizing energy.
So exactly. You use the word energy and being aware, and hence attaining some kind of clarity.
I guess clarity would be the word.
Clarity is
clarity of thought and action.
Clarity of thought and clarity of
action also, because
awareness. Let's say.
So
enough awareness of various systems around you, various systems inside you, and then having certain clarity of thought and action, of moving forward in time or along with time. Is one way of defining spiritual qualities.
Spiritual qualities for me.
No, even I agree with that. So it rings a bell.
But I think that ultimately the point of any spiritual inquiry is to lead us to a better life, in the sense that better life not just materially, not just getting to be more successful by knowing ourselves, but creating a life that is well lived, that is full of well-being, and that includes our physical selves, our sexual selves, professional selves,
emotional selves.
Exactly.
So the balance of many factors which in turn affect the thinking model. And are very much necessary to be balanced altogether, so that one has a clear way forward for all of that, the well-being and the betterment of.
But sometimes it's also, I believe, spirituality helps us understand that you can't have all the answers, that the mental model will never be complete, that it's an ever-growing process of refinement. On top of that, knowing fully well that there is beauty in uncertainty also. There is beauty in not knowing something, in being spontaneous and not planning everything, and not always having clarity of thought.
I'm very tempted to interject AI over here, right over here, because when you said that there is beauty about uncertainty and not knowing and surprise and discovery and etc., now all of a sudden I'm introducing the topic of AI, where everything is getting so understood at a micro level that things can become very predictable. So where do you think now that based on the discussion that we have so far on spirituality, and now moving a little bit towards AI, which includes natural language processing, which is able to understand what we hear and speak, and image recognition, which will be easily be able to understand shapes and forms and etc., in order to understand the world visually. And then comes its added advantages, where the two are combined to such a level that almost everything can be done at cutting edge precision level. Correct? So there is extreme precision and extreme predictability, if I'm not wrong. So the first question being that in this era where we are moving towards an AI driven world, and precision is now the next thing, or in terms of progress of 21st century, do you think that in terms of humanity, in terms of us enjoying the experiences of human life, we'll be missing out on these things?
On the uncertainty, that's an interesting question to ask, because if we think about it, the entire point of AI is to make human lives better.
Yes.
And the question is a more fundamental question: is uncertainty inherently good for human beings? So if we base this argument on the premise that having that spontaneity and uncertainty in life is a good thing, then AI ought to protect it, and it should help us live in a way in which we can explore more and discover more and make these adventurous choices once in a while. But if it is inherently bad, if uncertainty is, and we collectively agree that uncertainty in life is bad, it is wrong, it should not happen, then maybe AI should help us. But I agree with you that there is a threat to our adventurous selves, because AI will make things much more data driven and precise in that sense. And so the one example that I can give from my profession of how technology has in some way eroded the fun is, say for instance, when we look for a case, or when we are researching. Earlier, when there was no technology and no computers and no internet, people had to go through a lot of books to find that one case law. Yes. And that process of discovery had value in itself, because you would learn so much and you would explore different areas of law.
The unexpected.
And sometimes it was helpful also, and sometimes not very helpful, but the process was fun. And I think people became more thorough lawyers because of that process, because it required diligence and effort, patience. On the other hand, you could just search for certain keywords and find the case law from an online directory. That completely changes the game, because it makes it very easy, makes it extremely predictable, and all of this is now driven by very sophisticated algorithms. Not too different from, say, a sophisticated piece of AI. So my point is that maybe a little bit is lost in the process, that the sense of discovery, etc. But the question is, which is a more fundamental question, which I come back to,
is uncertainty.
Do we need uncertainty? What is the value or role? Is the gain from having added precision worth more to us than losing the uncertainty? Maybe the answer would lie in specific situations. Maybe there is no generalized answer.
Yeah, that's true for sure. And yes, I've noticed this in my profession, where people, students like us, we used to go all the time to the library to get books and knowledge, basic. And now there is technology, and there is easy accessibility, and hence the answers are generic. Because if there is one question and everybody Googles that question, or everybody Googles a similar version of that question, the answers are generic. But if you go to a library, you stumble upon one book and you stumble upon another book, you are roaming around, you're in a zone and you connect the dots a different way. And hence, the answers will be varied. So this leads to this one thing. This leads to this one idea that because of uncertainty, there is a chance of, let's say, a diverse opinion, a diverse answer bank, a diverse set of discourses that could emerge instead of a very specific, a very generalized, a very straightforward way of understanding knowledge.
Okay, I have two observations. One is I have two observations. The first is related to the Black Mirror episode, where
which one?
They have this app which so this is like a dating app where it can tell how long the relationship will last,
and hence you can only attach with the person for that period.
So I mean, that was obviously AI driven at some level, right? The question, so when I watched the episode, now I can link it to the discussion we are having today, is that if AI becomes that advanced, I think it will be making choices for us that I don't think it should be allowed to make. Discovering a significant other through a process of elimination and trial and the generic process which we now know as dating is an extremely important part of growing up and having so I think that if AI starts to permeate all of these parts
little
of
processes which are important, it is necessary for one to fall and
get up again and discover and explore and go through a heartbreak and live for someone else and love truly.
Yes,
I think those things. So it goes back to the idea of spirituality. Will it affect this process of self-discovery? Will it affect or make choices for us which are beyond our control, which are externally driven? Whereas spirituality is looking inward. Obviously taking in all the information we have about the world, but looking inward. So that's one thing. And the other observation is related to something that you said about technology making answers generic. I think that it is not a question of technology per se, it is a question of the kind of technology used. I don't think that future AI will be that simplistic. I think future AI will be tailored to each person's preferences.
Yes.
So there might be a future in which students could be looking for something and the AI will throw up a different answer based on their past preferences. And that's also a possibility. I don't think it's technology per se, it's the kind of technology that is used.
You've seen Interstellar, right?
Yeah.
So you've known that TARS robot, wherein you can set your preferences as to how much humor you want or how much serious.
Yeah. Maybe something like that.
But even more articulated, where you can set an uncertainty factor. I would like to have the answer should be. The answer that I receive should be slightly more uncertain. There should be slightly more unexpected answers that I receive, let's say by a factor of 5%. Is something that one sets for 10%, etc., etc.
So the first question is, will it make our choices external in that sense? And will we be thrown off the journey of self-discovery? And when that happens, and I believe that at some point AI will be smart enough where it could be able to contemplate its own existence. Do you think that it would also go through a process of discovery? For instance, in the movie Her, there's a time when Scarlett's character goes through this, which is the extremely sophisticated OS, goes through this process of self-discovery, interacts with other OSs, contemplates its own meaning and existence in the world.
And then what happens? I'm not able to.
And then it just vanishes and it could go either way. It could vanish, become positive, or it could become dark and be
manipulative
and we could end up in this sort of apocalyptic, tech-driven, robot-driven world. But the other thing that comes to my mind when I talk about AI is that a lot of the processes that AI aims to automate, because a lot of it is also about automation, will drive out a lot of jobs. And the question is that working or a profession or a business, anything that gives us some sort of relevance in the world is extremely important to us as human beings, because it leads to personal growth, it leads to professional growth. This is where we socialize, this is how we meet people and network. It's an essential part of who we are. For instance, we spend 12 hours a day working, and that forms an essential part of who we are. It gives us meaning and relevance in a world which is often quite harsh to people. So if you don't have a job, it feels incredibly bad, and you feel like there's no relevance, and that the powers that you've been given, spiritual powers, the ability to be conscious, are no longer needed. So work gives us a lot of meaning, and the future of work is going to be very different. Insert AI.
So, but speaking at a very global level, maybe, if you take cases like the rather developing countries, like let's say India or the African countries or other Southeastern Asian countries, where it is not so much. Now, in the US, they can still think of and pitch in ideas where a drone comes and delivers your Amazon package. I think India is far away from such a scenario. I'm speculating, but it's still far away. There's still a lot of jobs which are being offered because of Uber drivers, because of Swiggy deliveries, all sorts of things. Let's say, and the thing is, India has a lot of population, a country like India or China. So
maybe there is a flip side to it, which is that if all of the menial jobs, all of the labor-intensive work gets wiped off because of automation and AI, then all of the work that requires real human connection, like in the movie Her, where he's writing these letters for other people, which are
actually it's the AI that's writing, na?
But he's playing an active role in deciding what comes. So he's playing like this sort of the role of this emotional anchor, which is who he really is, what we are, emotional beings. So maybe there is a possibility that AI will help us become more spiritual, not less. Because all of the mundane tasks that we need to go through in order to get the free thinking time and enlightenment and read and do yoga and meditate and cogitate our own experience in the world, all of that, I believe we'll have more space and time to do it when all of the mundane tasks are somewhat automated.
Of course, have a lot of time to socialize, we'll of course have a lot of time to do all that. And that's true, because I was thinking to this, I was talking to this one person where they came up with the idea of what is the epitome of spirituality? What happens when you have a clear thought process, where you have a clear thinking model, you are aware of whatever is around you and internally as well, then what happens after that? So that person says that, essentially human beings want love and compassion. It is only that in the process of, achieving love and compassion that a human being becomes, equips with bad techniques. Not becomes a bad person, but equips
himself with
bad techniques to achieve love and compassion, or the attention, or the validation in a more layman sense. So the argument that the person was making was this is what we essentially want, correct? And if the world is systemized enough, if the world is set in a balance, menial jobs are taken care of, there's free thinking, there's time to socialize, there is enough money, let's say economy is good, and very utopian scenario, but essentially this is what we want, and if all of this is taken care of, we'll be able to achieve that. So the question is, will AI help us achieve all of this? Achieve in terms of passing the menial jobs off to the machine, and apart from that, still keeping the economy on the boost, still providing enough for the people to eat, drink, habitat, socialize, etc., etc.
I think that maybe, but I think that we've already become cyborgs in the sense that 50 years ago we were just human beings going about doing our work, but today we are cyborgs because we have this sort of added sensory.
We have an extension.
The
watch that you're wearing, or maybe the spectacles that you're wearing to begin with. Then the phone.
But my phone is always with me, and I have access.
Your phone is almost an extension of your
So when I'm walking around
and
the city,
it's still getting inside us with the earpods and the watches.
And even if it's not getting inside of us, I have this sort of interface, which is always with me, which gives me access to all of the world's information. In a sense, I'm already a cyborg. I'm half human, half robot already. The question is that the phone has helped me stay spiritual, because the phone comes equipped with applications like Headspace. It comes with a journal in which I can record my thoughts. It comes with a boatload of music, all of the music ever created. So I have access to that. So I think that if you are religiously following a ritual which involves certain things that help you on your path to become more spiritual, to experience enlightenment, then technology can help you. Ultimately, all technology will not be distracting or distractive to your quest.
Technology is technology in itself.
And
it's the way you use it.
Ultimately. So the question that will AI help us become more spiritual? Will it become more spiritual? All of these things are dependent ultimately, I believe, on the user, because you have a right of how much you want that AI to be a part of your life. If you don't want it, I could just chuck my phone and live a life as an Indian from 1970s. That's a choice I have. I can't completely escape it, but I can get pretty far from it. So I think that's one thing. But the other thing which we talked about in the beginning was what happens when the AI starts contemplating its own existence.
Yeah, we missed out on that, That's a serious question, and we may not have the exact answer to it, but it is a serious possibility. It is, let's say.
Would it necessarily be a bad thing if the AI has a touch of emotion, is able to?
I'm not having second thoughts. Yes, it's going to be a bad thing. Because see, for obvious reasons, since I'm a human, I'll be loyal to my species. And yes, if someone gets more above us in the food chain, we're going to be slightly territorial. That's my viewpoint.
My question is, which goes to the heart of it is, and which is a very pro-technology view, is that why is biological life better than non-biological life? Ultimately, it is life, because I think the way we look at life is if it's conscious about its existence. If it's a conscious being, it is alive, right? Even if it's not a conscious thing, it could be alive. But the way we look at life is that consciousness is life. It could be a very low level of consciousness, like a plant.
Or a mosquito. Anything.
But it is life.
It's consciousness.
But why do we rate biological life over non-biological life in, say, a form of this super advanced conscious computer, which is not made of carbon and hydrogen, but silicon and copper? How is it fundamentally different if both can cogitate and contemplate their own selves? And the other idea is that humans exist because of a process of evolution. So the most advanced life billions of years ago was this small amoeba, and that has been completely wiped out by subsequent additions, so to speak, in the food chain. And we are probably at the top now with some carnivores. Maybe we are at the top, goes without saying. So if there's someone above us, why is that a bad thing? Isn't that how life has always been? And are we not taking matters in our own hands.
Actually, it's always been like that, and we as humans were never on top of it. We managed to get on top of it only because we could talk and communicate better than all of the others.
If the AI is able to talk and communicate better than us, shouldn't it also deserve meritocratically to be above us?
In a very ideal situation, in an isolated scenario, of course.
Aren't we being too egoistical when we say that we should always be at the top, regardless of how powerful another species is, regardless of how smart another species is? Like, from a very technical point of view, shouldn't they wipe us out if they are smarter? I think it's a fairly... So the only way to stay relevant is to be smarter than them.
Yes, and in that sense, of course, in that sense, though, there is this entire another line of thought that comes, which is the bio and the tech coming together, half human, half technology. Instead of technology taking it completely over us, this is the other thing that could possibly happen, and I'm sure there are people in Silicon Valley working.
But the reason I say this is because think of what humans have done since coming into that place of supreme control, I would say, because we can control pretty much anything we want. We control entire forests and we control countries and things like that. So once we've reached this level of supreme and complete control, what we've done to all of the other life is terrifying. We've destroyed their habitats. We've kept some of them as pets. We've done genetic mutations and testing on them. We've kept, we eat them because they're lowly beings. And we also experiment with them on different levels. And the worst of all is that we're killing them every day by pollution and all of the other things that come with human existence. If there is a being that is superior to us, wouldn't it also have the right to do it? We've done it. We have no moral argument against it. A supreme being will be able to do that to us, and we'll probably have to live with it. Like, I don't think if AI becomes supremely intelligent, and I don't have a very negative view, but if it does become a fairly negative entity, then I don't think the future is very far away where a human will be kept on a leash and asked to sing and dance for the AI because it finds amusement in it. I don't think it's too far. We do it with monkeys today, or with dogs, or with dolphins in amusement parks.
That's absolutely right. I mean, in the sort of...
I mean, we can't take this moral stand and be like, we are always going to be at the top, because the way life works is that the smartest being takes all.
Takes it all. And hence it is a serious threat to us.
It is.
Yeah. Whether we like it or not. And I'm sure... I'm not sure. I think there could be one possible way in which one can speculate and predict something like this happening, and obviously it will not go in that direction, or it will go in a direction that benefits us, because you also have to understand that AI right now is under development. It's not in the best of its form. It's still being processed and developed and observed and modified and tweaked. And who is the one doing this? Us. So if there is any possibility that you just explain of having humans on the leash and being asked to sing and dance just for the sake of amusement, I'm sure and I'm certain whoever's developing it, X number of people, they will keep that into consideration and will not let that happen. Or there could be another possibility that they could do it for themselves and the world will be doing it the other way around.
That's true. It could be like this sort of cult with half AI and partly made up of like these really bad people ruling over the world. That could be a possibility.
Wealthy people or more powerful people doing that. The other way, the ideal way to do it would be to achieve some kind of synchronization between human thinking and AI thinking, trying to match them up, synthesizing it and making it open source for the world to access. At least not in the physical sense where a part of a hardware is installed inside the brain, but at least in the sense of a very quicker than laptops and quicker than phones access to information.
Right, which is possible, which is certainly possible, and there's work done in the Valley today which points in the direction that that sort of future isn't too far away. But I think you're right. I think ultimately the creators ought to make sure that there is a universal kill switch, because
there is one.
There ought to be one, a universal kill switch in which we can just completely shut out the internet, and shut out AI, and shut out whenever we feel like it, if there is a collective decision.
Yes, there has to be some leverage.
Some leverage that we have. Because that's the only way to.
Because I believe in an ideal world, one can climb up the ladder and become the superior being. But it's still in our hands.
If the AI is just as spiritual as us, can love, can feel, can hurt, can manipulate,
we can have it as a little.
Then why can it not be superior to us? So the question is, I'm not speaking for them. I'm not speaking for this future race of half human, half AI bots. I'm not talking about AI. I'm just saying that it also has the same learning mechanism as us, which is machine learning, which is the ability to take information in loops and improve its responses every time. So a method of constant refinement, which is what humans also do while they're learning. We learn through a feedback mechanism where we're told this is wrong, so we find a new way of doing it until we find the best way of doing it.
Absolutely.
So the idea is that what you're saying, that both of it can be synthesized, seems right, because fundamentally the learning processes are the same, and so if there's a way of just synchronizing them, it'll happen. But coming back to the point of this discussion, which is what is AI and spirituality really? And I think it comes down to the three things that we talked about today, which is AI and the future, which is AI and spirituality, and the interface that it will have on a lot of the other things that we do, like with our work, with our love life, with so many other things. And I think the point of this discussion was to simply give our viewers an idea of the kind of discussion we normally have. And I think we've done a good job in establishing the kind of tangent and content that we will bring. Obviously, this was something that we thought of spur of the moment. So it was not as well researched or thought through as we would like. But it was decent, I think.
Yeah, it was superb.
So I guess...
How do you want to conclude this?
I guess one way of doing this is to leave some food for thought for our viewers.
Definitely. So let's shoot up a couple of questions, and that could become...
I only have one question, which is something that we talked about briefly in the podcast, which is why is biological life inherently superior than non-biological life? It is believed so, but non-biological life in the way that I'm talking about does not exist yet. But I'm talking about it in a very abstract sense. If there is a machine which can feel and think and hurt and believe the way we do, which can have faith in things and which can love other machines and all of that, why is that life any less or any more than us? So I guess that's my question. It's something to think about. Just because we're made from a different set of compounds, have a different kind of biology, does not make us superior, is my view. We can argue about it till kingdom come. We could say that human beings are natural beings. We have gone through a process of biological growth and all of that. And
there are, of course, the generic arguments are, of course, over there that that it has to have some kind of, you can break it down to the biological cells and those things acting upon us.
But what if the machine could procreate? What if it found a way of procreating?
Yeah, kind of like in the movie shit.
We've used an awful lot of movies. So we've used an awful lot of movies. But anyway, I guess I'll leave with that question. And I'd also leave with a recommendation, which is to read this book by Cal Newport called Deep Work. I think, it's completely on a different tangent altogether, but I think it will help people who are looking to concentrate more, get in touch with their professional selves, find time to do the things that really matter, and also work extremely productively in a world which is AI driven and full of distractions. So I guess I'll leave with that recommendation.
All right.
Okay, so I guess that's it. We'll hope to provide such brilliant content in the coming weeks.
We're going to do it for sure, and they will be acquainted with videos and other things that will keep the user engaged.
So thank you very much for listening, and we hope to have your captive listening next time we do this. Thank you.
Thank you.